Hi, so my name's Jonathan Rogers and I'm the game director on Path of Exile 2.
Jonathan, you're showing off Path of Exile 2 on console, so with the first game, it took years for it to come to console. And why was it so important to make sure that Path of Exile 2 was ready for console in time for launch?
So I think that because of the way that Path of Exile 1 didn't have console on launch, it really made the console players feel like second-class citizens, and they never really built like a proper community there. So I think that if we really are to take console seriously, we have to make sure that we're simultaneously launching, but also that every patch is deployed, and having things like crossplay and so on just really helps with that as well.
You're adding couch co-op for the console versions, and what are the big challenges for incorporating that feature?
So the main thing is that, obviously there was a bunch of engineering work to sort of even get to the point of being able to start working on it. But then once you've done that, it is quite a UI challenge to kind of make it work. We effectively have to make 3 versions of the UI, one for PC, one for console, and then one for couch co-op. And that's taken quite a bit of time. Like, we have to make sure that that we sort of thought at first that we'd be able to get away with reusing a lot of the UI from the console version, but basically almost every screen had something where people were like, oh, I really want to be able to do this with both players at the same time. And so they kind of ended up finding, oh, we have to do this like sort of half-screen couch co-op UIs. And that has been worth it because it makes couch co-op a lot better, but it's certainly like a large engineering task. It's just that I think that for console particularly, it is something that people do really want. Like, we've had a lot of excitement for the feature.
What are the biggest opportunities that couch co-op has opened up for Path of Exile 2 in terms of gameplay and delivering the most enjoyable experience possible?
So ultimately, couch co-op is the same as being in a party with another player, but I think that Path of Exile 2 is particularly good at that because we've got a lot more sort of cross-cutting things between skills from different classes. So a lot of classes have shared keywords, like for example you've got something like armor break where multiple classes can either apply it or take advantage of it, so therefore you can kind of come up with a build that's going to work across 2 players really well. But also just simple things like today we showed on the monk that Tempest Bell skill. The Tempest Bell is a skill that you can, any character can hit it. So if you've got another character class with like a really fast hitting skill, then you can ring that thing and do a bunch of damage. So there are a lot of pretty interesting cross build synergies going on.
That's interesting that you mentioned that. Have you taken that into consideration, whether certain classes will work for in a co-op setting when designing new classes?
So I wouldn't say that we design explicitly for it. It's kind of, I think what we do is very similar to how Magic the Gathering would work, where effectively you design keywords, you come up with interactions you think might work, but we kind of want to ideally leave it to the players to come up with the most interesting stuff. Now, of course, we still have to be caring about what is possible for balance reasons. But ideally, we just make a lot of things with interesting keywords. Other players work out how they might use those things to their advantage. And as long as we've got enough stuff, you should come up with interesting combinations.
So you're unveiling the Witch as a new class. What can you tell me about the Witch's skills and abilities?
Yeah, so the Witch, when we were designing, we really had to try and work out, what do we want summoning to be like in PoE 2? And in PoE 1, we kind of had this issue where it was very hard to balance minion life in a way that's fun for both boss fighting and clearing. If you balance minion life too low, then when a boss slam will just kill all your minions, and then you're like sitting there like rezzing for a long time. But if the monster life is too high, you can just trivialize any kind of clearing that you're doing, and it becomes like not very good either. So we kind of knew we wanted to come up with a system that would allow us to defeat both those problems, and effectively by having the system of permanent minions that respawn all at the same time, what it means is that we can balance minion life low enough so that clearing works. And then if you do get hit with a giant slam from a boss, then that will kill them, but then they're all back, 5 seconds later with all of your minions again, and then you're kind of back in action again. And when we really thought about it, it's actually very similar to how flasks are. Like if you're a traditional player playing with flasks, and a boss slams you and you don't die, but you get down to like 20% life, how long does it take you to get back to full life again and back in action? And the answer is a couple of seconds while you use your flasks. So for a minion character, we really had to find a way for it to be the same, where like you can get back to full strength again without too much time passing.
Now, I went into that Devourer fight and I kind of saw that principle at work, where basically a boss slam just wiped out all of my minions, but they were back within a few seconds after like a brief cooldown. So I think that's a very interesting idea, and I also want to ask, what other sort of mechanics have the idea of permanent minions opened up?
So the other one, of course, is the command skills. So command skills effectively make it so that when you, each minion, not all of them, but most of them, come with some kind of skill that you can use while you have that minion. There's a couple of interesting things with that, with the fact that you want to keep that minion alive, like potentially have it in the back in order to be able to use the command skill. But also it means that there's just more stuff as a minion character to do, because once you remove the need to summon manually, we kind of have to make sure that we've got other stuff that, that the character is able to do. So it kind of makes the minion character play a bit more like another character, except that they're using their minions' abilities rather than their own abilities. Now, we still want the ability for you to be able to use your own spells and have like a hybrid build like that, but we also wanted to make it so that if you're just a purely minion character, that you've got like active abilities, you've got things that feel like you've got that same kind of responsive gameplay where, you know, a boss does something, you do something in response, like a situation comes up, you do something. Like, we want that type of gameplay to happen through all of our, for all classes, even summoners, even though summoners traditionally are more like summon your minions and then wait. In order to get that, we needed to find some other way to have active abilities, and command skills are the way we came up with.
As always, when it comes to anything Path of Exile, I have to ask how big the numbers get. So how many permanent minions can you have out at one time? And is that solely limited by how much spirit you have available to you?
So it's entirely limited by spirit. The sort of what you might call median number is towards endgame is around 20. It would be relatively easy to get 30 if you were really like juicing, if you're juicing everything like to the extent of any other thing that you're doing. If you just went for spirit, you'd be able to get that. But sort of 20 is the kind of in-game thing. Now that does turn into a bit of a ruckus. In order to somewhat ameliorate that, we have higher cost spirit minions that cost more, and so in order to pare back some of the spam you would do. But one thing we didn't show in the demo was specters. So we have specters as well. The reason we didn't show it is because the console version of the UI wasn't finished yet. This will actually be shown once the embargo lifts in the PC demo that we're going to show. But effectively, you can bind any monster that's dead on the ground into a gem, and then have that as one of your permanent minions. So that effectively means that the minion choices you have extend to the entire game's different monsters. And there's different spirit costs that were balanced for each monster in the game. And so because some of those monsters are extremely powerful relative to others, like in PoE 1, the difference between two white monsters might be like one's like twice as good as another one. In PoE 2, that could be like 10 times, 15 times as good as another one, which means that you've got some monsters that, like can have lots of abilities and so on, and you can get one big one of those and then a bunch of other little guys. But yeah, effectively your minion group can extend to a very large number of different monsters.
I was having a lot of fun with the witch in there, so this is great news for me, and I'm looking forward to seeing how all this works. So the last question from me is, there's so much that you want to have ready for launch that's going to call out to the original Path of Exile player. I mean, those are the guys that have been with you since day one. They've been with you for about a decade now. But you also want to attract newcomers. You want to bring people in who are looking to dive in with a fresh slate. So those players are probably going to look at a ginormous skill tree like the one you have in Path of Exile 2 right now, and they might think it's a little overwhelming. So how do you balance designing Path of Exile 2 as a game that you want to add so much more for fans of the original game, while also not coming across as something that might be too intimidating for a newer player?
So what we've done, especially with the skill system, is make it so that we present the game as if you've got a bunch of class-locked abilities with a traditional skill tree, and even though it isn't actually that. So you're a warrior. You right-click on an uncut skill. It gives you what looks like a traditional kind of Diablo 2 style skill tree of like, here's like some different skills per level. And you could just pick those. And you could also pick a skill from any other class. They're all just there, but most people just won't really think about it that way. Like, oh, these are my skills. I'm going to pick these things. And then, also for support gems now, which we showed in the demo, you right-click one of those. It says, like, here's the skills you got equipped. Here are 3 choices per tier of what you might want to equip with that. And all of these will work reasonably, right? And when you present it that way, once again, it just looks like a pick list of, like, here's some stuff that would work with this. And what people don't necessarily realize when they're a new player is, oh, there's also the 100 other gems that would work with this that you could come up with interesting combinations for. But if you're a new player, you look at that, you're just like, you take it at face value, like, here are my options. So effectively what we're doing is we're making it so that more things are like that, where there is the ability to pick anything, but we're showing you kind of up front, here are some stuff that will just work. And if you pick those things, you'll probably have an okay time. So like we're trying to really make sure we're doing that. Now the skill tree kind of can't be that entirely because it is just this giant thing. But I think that the skill tree inherently is simple. It's just a question of what do I pick. So it's making sure that the things that are nearby that you can sort of see do feel like things that are obvious that you would want. And that's just a careful balance of making sure that everything is correct in that way. But yes, that's still a bit intimidating. But I think that in Path of Exile 1, where you had the skill tree, but also all the other intimidating stuff that was going on with skills, that kind of went over the top and made it very hard to get into. And I think Path of Exile 2 definitely does improve that situation a lot.
Path of Exile 2 beta still on track for this year?
Yep, definitely. We're still very much, it's been too long without having actual players. We definitely need to get some players, and so that's why it really has to be this year.
Jonathan, thank you so much. Really looking forward to it.
Thank you.